Hey guys, Bump here, bringing you this 11.1 Unholy DK Sun Lane Mythic Plus guide. I had a lot of people asking me about this one, so finally, it's out there. I'll talk about talents, I'll talk about rotation, and I'll try and teach you guys how to essentially be a blaster in Mythic Plus. Sun Lane with Unholy is super strong. It is like one of the best AoE specs in the game, I believe. It's also quite straightforward, and it doesn't suffer that much from previous Unholy errors where, like, you wouldn't do nice cleave damage or your single target was terrible. It's actually fine. Single target, sure, maybe, but like the cleave damage is really there, which is great. Let's just jump straight into it, talk about what talents we run. So the kind of standard build is the one I got up here. This actually does not run Apocalypse, and that's the main difference between the two variations. So what I got here is a build that runs both Pestilence and Ghoulish Frenzy. The main benefit here is that you get a lot more AoE damage. Pestilence really helps you generate wounds in AoE, which gets your Fester Scythe kind of cycle going, and means that in big pools you deal insane amount of damage, right? The main negative aspect is that you sacrifice quite a lot of single targets. So the alternative is to, instead of having Ghoulish and Pestilence, you pick up the second point in Improved Festering Strike and Apocalypse, and that gives you like 10% single targets. So it's like a big difference. But, I think it's a personal preference, and it also depends on your group. So can you justify not having a lot of single target damage and just be the AoE pumper, and then maybe your teammates could help you out in the single target, and you can have a really good kind of combination there. I don't know. That's the main difference between the two. And, obviously there's loads of other different builds, but I think these two are the main ones for Sun Lane specifically. Now, when it comes to your damage and how you deal it, I'd like to start off by having like more of a holistic view about like what actually does damage for the whole DK in a given Myth Plus run. I got a damage breakdown from this key up here we can have a look at. So first off, you can see both Vampiric Strike and Death Call are top two. They're around like 30% of the overall damage. So essentially Vampiric Strike is when you press a Dark Transformation, it transforms your Scourge Strike into Vampiric Strike, and that deals a lot of damage. It's shadow damage, and it's much higher AP percentage than Scourge Strike, essentially. It's an amped up version of Scourge Strike. It's up there because we hit it so much in a key. You can see up here, this is a details plugin that shows you what I pressed, and it's going to be a lot of Vampiric Strike up there. So you're going to spend a lot of time pressing that. We also have Death Call, and you can kind of see here that Death Call is number 2, and Epidemic is quite a lot lower. With Sun Lane, Death Call is just a really, really hard-hitting button. With Dark Transformation up, you get like a 70% damage increase to it. You have improved Death Call in the build. We pick up all Death Call talents, and that means that we're going to press Death Call in the majority of pools. Epidemic only becomes relevant when we are hitting 7+ targets, and I personally only really use it if there's not a priority target in this specific pool. Obviously, it depends if you're just looking to do max like overall, but if you're trying to time a key, if there is a priority target, you should be hitting that with Death Call, because that's also going to be a really big benefit for you, and why you can max out. By the way, 110 million Blood Beast, we'll talk about that later. If you want to get this week aura, you can just join my Discord, and I got one of the versions there. You can also just sub to me on Twitch, and you get my entire week aura package, you see on the left side. Anyway, Death Call versus Epidemic, we just talked about that. It's also a big portion of your damage. We then have your diseases. This is still a part of the damage, right? We pick up everything that amps up our diseases, like Epidemic Fever and Plaguebringer, that kind of stuff. But it just ends up being like, around like 8% Virulent Plague, and then you have your other diseases, super strain, so it's like 10, 12-ish. Still something we'll focus on, make sure we have it up all the time, but not something that's like a major part of our overall damage. We then have Bursting Souls. This ends up being quite low, like 7%. It's not a big deal, but still, in big AoE, we will passively generate wounds on lots of targets. We will also actively generate them when we get Festering Scythe procs. If it's a really, really big pool, there's going to be a huge amount of our damage, but overall net key, it's not that much. Sure, it's an important part of our rotation, but it's actually not one of the big contributors. And then we also have Bloodless Life. There's a long list here, but I feel like we should talk through every bit here because they all come into play in different ways. Bloodless Life, essentially, when you hit Vampiric Strike, you have a probability to spawn a little bloody guy that stores up the shadow damage you deal, and then it explodes towards the end. You can see I have a weak aura that's just on the top left of my character there. Shows you the store damage and the explosion damage. So whenever that procs, it can deal a significant amount of damage. I've had a scenario where it dealt 144 million in a single explosion. It's a bit insane because it's like a quadratically scaling one. So the damage it stores is proportional to the total damage you deal, and then it explodes that damage on every single target. So imagine you have like, let's say 5 targets. You deal 1 million damage each one of them. That's 5 million in total, and then that explodes, and you have to on every single one of them. So you get, you got 5 million total, and then you get 25. There's a division factor of like 1/8, which means that it's not exactly that way, but fundamentally it scales incredibly well in big AoE. So when that procs early on in a pool, you're like, yes, it's a big one, this one. We have Infliction of Sorrow. This is a Zen Lane spell, which means that when Dark Transformation finishes, you consume your dots on the target when you press an Skirt Strike. This is kind of like the reason why Zen Lane is really good in big keys and not that good in small keys. It's kind of fine now, right? But previously that was the case. It's because you kind of need your Dark Transformation to finish before you get a big chunk of your damage. But you can see here, it's only 5% my overalls. It's not too bad. We then have Festering Scythe. This is the final bit. We play with that. You burst the wounds. It stacks up a buff, and when that reaches 20, your next Festering Strike is really powerful and applies wounds to everything. This is kind of like your big AoE generator. It's the reason we pick Pestilence as well. When you get a Festering Scythe proc, you just spend that immediately, and that puts loads of wounds on all targets, and then you burst those, and you get a new Festering Scythe proc, and you spend that, and you get this really strong feedback cycle. And it means that on big pools, we are just insane in terms of our damage. Okay, so that's, there is a lot of different things that end up being part of your damage. And it might sound like, daunting at first that there's so many things to keep track of. But when we actually talk about rotation, you'll notice that it's really quite simple. So, moving on to the actual rotation, what do you do when you engage a pack? So with this build, it is quite simple. The first thing I will do is as you run towards the pack, you put down Defile. This will start generating wounds on targets with Pestilence. It deals good damage as well, and it would also enable your cleave. After that point, use all your cooldowns. And for this build, there's only 2. Unholy Assault and Dark Transformation. You can use Aberration Limb, right? That also counts as 1. I would use that towards the start. But only 2 cooldowns to keep track of is quite neat. Once that's done, you're going to start with your Vampiric Strike spam. You're essentially just going to hit Vampiric Strike as much as possible. When you get a Sundew proc, you're going to spend that on Death Call or Epidemic. Again, depending on the situation. In this scenario, you can see I use Death Call because I have a priority target and there's not that many enemies. When I get a Scythe proc, I also use that as soon as I can. Otherwise, it's just going to be using Vampiric Strike as much as possible. Once your Defile has run out, so you no longer have the cleave buff, you put down another one. And, as long as the pack doesn't last for like a minute plus, you can just change your Defiles and you will always be cleaving. And then you kind of keep doing that. When your Dark Transformation window finishes, you're going to hit the Skirt Strike. That's going to consume all your dots. You need to put them back up. But that's kind of like only time you actually need to reapply your dots in a generic pool. And then it's just, spamming Skirt Strike and then hitting your Rune Power Spenders as appropriate. It is quite simple, right? There's not much going on to it. And I think it's quite nice because it's much more straightforward than it had previously been. We had this whole setup window and all that kind of thing. Now it's like, go in, Defile, send your cooldowns, and then just start spamming Vampiric Strike. Done. I thought we'd just have a look at some of the gameplay here. We can see that in practice. You can see here, I will have Unholy Assault and Dark Transformation ready. I'm going to use both of those. We're going to get up the pack here. I'm going to use I won't do that. Okay, so Defile, Unholy Assault, Dark Transformation. I can't hit everything because I was picking up my transmitter. And then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to spam my Vampiric Strike. I can't do it anymore and get some new procs. So I'm going to use Death Calls. And, you know, you're sitting at 4.5 million. I had my Defile run out, so I used another one to keep going my cleave. That's it. I thought, you know, that's the AoE bit. Some kind of usual questions I get here, you know. Do you never press Festive Strike unless it's a Scythe proc? No, I wouldn't do that. I think there's a bit of a debate about how much Festive Strike you would do, but I feel like there's too much resources going into it and too much time to be worthwhile. So I would just never press it, even if there's no wounds in the targets. Just defile down and just spam Vampiric Strike. That's a loads of damage, so it's kind of fine. Whoops. Bit of a oopsie by me there. Let's keep going. All right. And yeah, another one. Do you react to Blood Beast? Do you do anything differently? Not really. One of the reasons we press Vampiric Strike so much is also to proc Blood Beast. It's based off your Vampiric Strikes, so we kind of spam those to try and get procs of Blood Beast, and we ideally want those early. You will notice when you play this, it's a bit of a casino spec, because if you get a Blood Beast proc very early in the window, like, it is so much damage. If you don't get one, it's kind of fine. We still do like more damage than anyone else, but when you do get it, it feels great. What feels really bad is when you like spamming Vampiric Strike and you get it towards the end of a pack and it just explodes and does no damage at all. So, you know, you take some, you lose some, right? I think that's the only kind of annoying thing. Anyway, that's the AoE rotation. Hopefully that's in good enough detail. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you wish me to clarify. And I can also make more videos talking about this. Anyway, so what happens in single target, right? Well, in this scenario, we kind of go back to the standard single target rotation that is for Unholy. With Sun Lane, when you press Dark Transformation, it's just going to be Vampiric Strike and Death Call all the way. No Festering Strike at all. Once your Dark Transformation window has finished, you're going to consume dots and then reapply them. And then you're going to start doing your standard kind of build wounds, Festering Strike, burst on with Scourge Strike kind of vibe. We are going to use Defile in our single target rotation. Use it before you enter your first Dark Transformation window, and then in between Dark Transformation windows, you're going to want to use that. Just keep going. It deals good damage, it gives you haste, and it increases the likelihood of getting Vampiric Strike procs, which both deals more damage, and make sure that you keep your haste buff going. I didn't talk about the haste buff at all, because it's kind of irrelevant when you do AoE damage, because it's going to proc so much. But a single target, you kind of want to try and get it, to make sure you keep going. Here's an example, by the way, 3.7 million on that boss, which is just cleave. And, you know, Unholy is finally good at cleave, which is amazing. So there's that, which is lovely. When it comes to, like, stats, Haste and Mastery is the way to go. Haste has such a strong synergy with Sun Lane. It's quite ridiculous. What happens is that the more haste you have, well, the more Death Calls or Epidemics you can use in your Dark Transformation window, which extends those windows, and that's where our entire damage comes from. So the longer the DT window, the more damage, and that is why haste is so powerful. When it comes to like generally gear, I'd say for trinkets, we are gonna run House of Cards when you get it, and then like a passive. Double passive also works there, but I would run House and Cards and then a passive trinket, like what are they called again? Give me 1 second. Like Mechanical Amplifier, that's a great passive one. Suspicious Energy Drink, Reverb, Radio, lots of good passive ones that all kind of give you haste, which we like. When it comes to embellishment, I would just run double Dusk Thread, or like the ones that gives you either versatility or the one that gives you crit, and it's kind of like, that's it. Alright, so that is your Unholy DK Sun Lane Myth Plus rotation guide video, and some other bits and pieces. This is so much fun. I really like this build. It's a bit of a fresh air. There's nothing quite like getting a big boy proc from your Blood Beast and then just annihilating a pack. You see it when it bursts. Everything just loses 20% health in like, you know, like that in an explosion. It's it feels satisfying. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Upvote, downvote, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you much for watching. Bye bye.